And welcome to Justice Serve TV. Michael Bryant here.
Linda Kenny Bodden here. And before we announce our special guest, Michael, I forgot to tell you something.
Oh my
So
gosh,
this
what
is
is
this is going to surprise you. You know the dog that we talked about earlier in our
Oh yeah,
question
yeah,
and
yeah.
answer
Somebody
today?
find what happened?
The dog was tied to a post in the hurricane, left to die there. It seems, or maybe be picked up. Well, the police took it to the vet, gave it a clean bill of health, and it's been saved. And now it'll be up for adoption and will go to a really good home. So
Very nice.
that
That was
dog has been saved. I know that some of the people that watched earlier, I see Afton is here watching us. Dog saved.
very good. Right, left there tied up right by I-75, just
Right.
like a cast off prepping for the hurricane. Anyway, stand by. We have a very special guest coming up, but you're going to have to suffer through this first.
Courthouse the other day in the hallway, you're singing "Oh Happy Day."
One word prayer. Justice, where are you?
Okay, we have an executive decision to make here because we have a couple of people standing by.
We're going to bring them both in.
Let's do that. First of all,
A
we have
real
a guy
surprise.
who I think we can blame or credit for what we're doing here now because we're stealing many ideas from him and putting them to work here at Justice Serve TV, and that is Mr. Defense Diaries himself. That is Bob Motta, and I think it's safe to say, Bob, for those who may watch us, if you like what we're doing, it's not his credit. But if you don't like what we're doing, it's blame Bob. He's the guy.
And my favorite guest, I'm sorry to say, Bob. Okay, I've fallen in love with the man who writes the best briefs I've ever seen.
Hey.
Ever. And the best Twitter account, I should say X account today when we're talking about lyrics, and that is Mr. Douglas Weinstein, who represents everybody
as a surprise
guest.
Surprise guest because he represents Yak Gotti. The YSL case is out of control, even on days when it's not supposed to be. It is, and we got to bring him in here and chat. Thanks, Doug. I know you're very busy. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us here.
Certainly. Thanks for inviting me on. Sorry, I don't have much time tonight.
Yeah, that's fine. We understand the circumstances. Quick question that you can't answer. There's a sealed something going on there. Can you give us any color as to what's going on?
I guess I'm utterly useless today because I wasn't in the YSL case. Are you referring to the meeting that Brian had up at the bench today?
Yes.
I think he led it. Now, I've only seen what you guys have seen, but I think he led into that with speaking about Mr. Johnson's computer. Is that right?
Yeah.
He made it clear that it was not about the case. It's kind of how he phrased it. So not about the facts, not about it's some collateral issue.
Yeah, I don't know because I wasn't there. So,
okay.
And I'm not privy to any communications as to what happened today. At least, so I don't think I'm disclosing anything. I know that we had an issue last year where there was an attorney's computer that was seized. So perhaps it's somewhat relating to that.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because we had Ashley Merchant on earlier today. You'll see the interview on Friday. And we were discussing everything that's going on in Fulton County. And through that, we learned that even infamous Sylvia's, there was a Google search warrant or something set up by the prosecution. I don't know what's going on in Fulton County, but we want to get your take. Bob Motta is here, and our guests are watching a surprise as to what is going on with like that motion. You were our top moment on your motion with your incredible footnote. And I said, usually footnotes are something people don't read, but wow, that is really a mouthful as to the prosecutor's motion that you can't make any objections in the trial, and then the judge, of course, overrules the prosecution and says that it's a waste of time for some of their stuff. So, I mean.
Yeah,
come on. Have you ever seen anything like this? Really?
Your viewers know what motion we're talking about that the state filed, or should I recap?
Give us
recap it. The state filed a less than one paragraph motion. The caption of the motion, the title of the motion was longer than the motion itself.
That's what I said.
And it requested that basically it requested that for the rest of the trial, the judge not sustain any 403 waste of time objections that the defense may raise in the course of the case.
That's awesome.
So basically just gutting Rule 403 from the remainder of the trial. And I'm only assuming she did that because, I raised those 24, 25 403 objections one morning and 21 were sustained. So she must have been bent out of shape about that. But there was no case law cited.
Yeah,
no statute
Doug, that
cited.
had to have been for a reason. There's no case law that exists that would ever support that proposition.
Nothing would support that. So
No.
I filed a somewhat mocking response last night. It was actually much worse, my first draft. And then I set it away for 2 hours, and that was my toned down version of it. But I don't know how to respond other than with mockery.
But I think she said, didn't the judge say that she denied it for all the reasons Mr. Weinstein said?
Yeah, she did. And I did have legitimate reasons for turning it down. But trust me that my original response, which will never see the light of day, was much harsher. No.
It reminded me of some sort of playground, like, Mom, she's picking on me. Can you tell him to stop picking on us? I couldn't believe it.
You simply can't believe it. You can't believe what's going on.
Well,
and
y'all are seasoned litigators. Why do you file a motion with the court that you know you're going to lose?
Well,
to get it out to the press.
To get it out to the press is the only reason why you would do that. But this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. And then you do something on the lyrics too today. Retweet something about the lyrics because she wanted to put in lyrics, and she also wanted to put in something from an Instagram account, like some lyrics that didn't make any sense.
I believe what it was that I was tweeting about, and of course I was actually trying to do some other work, but I couldn't. I had I keep the trial on in the background, and she was trying to put forward, I believe it was a tattoo. I may be wrong about that. I think it was a tattoo, but it was something, and she didn't realize that it was some famous rap lyrics. And I'm like, I think I may have used some language in my tweet.
You did. You said it's a effing lyric. I can say it.
Yeah, it's okay to say here. It's a safe place for you.
Why should the 60-year-old white guy know that it's a lyric, and the state, whose job this is to prosecute this case, not know that that's a lyric?
Well, because they shouldn't be trying cases on artists' lyrics. That's the first answer. But I have a real question for you.
You're my favorite person now.
Look, man, I'm a brother in arms, fellow defense attorney, 20 plus years. So I'm all about you, man. So I think last count we're at about 465 motions for mistrials. When is she going to grant one? She's got, do you see this thing seriously going all the way to the end?
I think the judge would like for it to go to the end because I gave her so many opportunities, and so did some others, to rule for mistrial earlier on. But I don't see how the state changes their behavior or their actions, and I just can't believe that we're not going to get to some point in the next few months where the judge just has absolutely no choice but to grant a mistrial. I just don't want a mistrial unless I can get it with prejudice, because right now, I think anybody looking at this would say we're winning. So I got a winning hand. I don't want to throw that away unless we can get it with prejudice.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And really interesting, I'll just give you a piece that when Ashley was on earlier, she said, like in her case with the records, they're actually subpoenaing her to testify at a hearing. That office, and I'm not, because obviously you're dealing with Miss Love, but there was a moment today that apparently there wasn't much love between Miss Love and her co-counsel, where he told her to back off, get away from him. So that was like another hot mic moment that happened today when you weren't there. So we're following it for you.
We're focusing on those two things. First of all, the filing of that motion gives you great insight into the prosecution's belief that they're actually competent. I mean, they didn't, I guess, think much. Here's a motion for you. What do you think? That's ridiculous. Another thing, we have a little community tab on our YouTube channel, and the question is, will YSL Judge Paige Whitaker ever, all caps, declare a mistrial? Right now, we are at 81% no. She's proven that even outrageous behavior is forgiven. 19% say yes if the prosecution continues to abuse the process. So, I don't know, 80-20? Okay.
That's probably maybe the right odds. It's just when you see For example, real quick, Bruce Harvey's motion, I think, was the easiest way for her to grant the mistrial, where Bruce filed a motion saying, look, it is just not possible for you to catch up on the 7 months of trial that came before you so that you're able to competently rule on issues, rule on directed verdict. He gave a whole list of things where she could grant a mistrial and do so without impugning the integrity of either the prosecution or Judge Glanville. So I thought it was, I don't think he did it for this reason, but I thought it was a really smart political move, and that here's a way out where you don't sully anyone's reputation, but you give a mistrial. And she didn't go for that. So
see, I didn't, but that doesn't meet your requirement, because I think had she granted that, I don't think it's going to be with prejudice. And if for the folks out there that don't know what that means, I mean, when Doug's asking for something to be granted with prejudice, that means they're never bringing it back. It's dead in the water. The case is done. They can't refile it. If she were to grant a mistrial with without prejudice, that means that they could rebring the case within a year. But I mean, God, like the thought of going through that again, man.
I know,
know.
But at that time, I wasn't as adamant about insisting upon prejudice because, for example, Copeland, Woody hadn't testified yet. And I think that's really where their case went south in a hard way.
My favorite witness of all time, Man.
Smart guy on the stand.
That was some appointment television. That really was amazing. I loved him. I loved
him. Finesse. I didn't lie. I finessed. I'll never forget that. That was great. I mean, he was almost as good. When we tried Hernandez, we had some guy who was a snitch who had to come over. He got a deal, but he knew how to testify too. But he had to come a second day. He didn't have clothes, so his lawyers went out, and he came, I kid you not, in a bunny suit. Someday I'll bring that picture back. He came in a rabbit ears and everything, and that's how he testified.
Oh my gosh. All right, guys, I gotta drop off, but thanks for having me on.
Hey, man,
thank you, Doug.
Appreciate it, buddy. Take care.
All right, I will
talk
be
to you
there
next
tomorrow.
week.
Give him hell in there. Give him hell in there.
We'll be in YSL next week. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Hey, David. All right. So always fun to have Doug fill us in on the ridiculousness. Apologize, Bob, for shoehorning him in to the Bob show.
I loved it.
So,
yeah, but now Bob can take this clip. I mean, repeat it because he gave us some great information. He's terrific as to how he's phenomenal. He really is. And
he was honest. He said he didn't go today. He had some other clients that actually needed attention, and he sent his surrogate. Little did he know that it was going to have a little bit of something going on. But
little drama, legal drama.
Okay, so we got a lot going on here. Bob Motta. The rest of the time is yours.
It's all Bob all the time. Hey, I do have. Do we have? This is what I usually. Can we fire off the breaking news sounder? We don't have that. We don't have one of those.
Graphic.
It's not in the budget yet. We're working on it. Okay, this is in the Brian Kohberger case. In case those folks are plotting ahead.
Hot off the press.
Yeah, This is hot off the press. This is I love this redacted order governing further criminal proceedings and notice of trial setting. This, of course, Brian Kohberger in the horrible case of the 4 co-eds, 4 college kids killed in Moscow, Idaho. It's been on the calendar, off the calendar, on the calendar. Recently, the subject of a change of venue. So now it is in Ada/Boise. Bigger jury pool there. That's the theory. But again, this is one of those cases I call a Mars case, because unless you just came from Mars, you know all about this case coast to coast. But here's the trial setting details. Number one, I found this interesting. The jury questionnaires will be administered approximately redacted 2025. So sometime in 2025, they decided to redact the actual time that's going to happen. But voir dire is going to commence on July 30th, 9 a.m. The trial is scheduled to run.
Dire? Did you say? Excuse me.
Yes.
The
jury. I like voir dire.
I mean, it's potato.
I mean, that term is the subject of many law school arguments for some reason.
100%.
There are people that will go this way versus this way. Okay.
Yeah.
So
and both are correct, technically.
Whatever you want to call it, it's happening on July 30th at 9 a.m. The trial itself is set to commence on August 11 and run through November 7, and you'll like this, inclusive of the penalty phase, if necessary.
If necessary is the part
if necessary. So there you go. They're going to begin every day at 8:30, finish at 3:30.
Ooh.
Yeah, interesting, right? with a lunch break of 45 minutes.
And
it will
that
go-
is Idaho mountain or Pacific?
No, they're mountain. They're
Okay,
mountain. So
so-
they're 2 hours behind us here in the east, 1 hour behind you in Chicago.
Okay.
So that's a pretty that's an East Coast friendly finish for the day. So that's
Very.
6:30. I'm sorry, 5:30 East Coast time. So
Very.
that's nice.
Yeah.
We don't have to stay up late here. You know, Linda, we need to get to bed early. We can't stay up
Right.
late.
Linda's in bed by 7:30 every
Take
night.
the dog out and go to sleep.
Smart.
That's me. That's my
Smart.
nightlife.
Let's see what else is in here. Let me see if I can share this before we move on. Pretrial conferences coming up May 15. I figure there might be one or two of those. Not unlike YSL, where the pretrial conferences continue into trial, which is bizarre.
For 2 years.
Expert witness deadline is in January. Just scanning this for the first time. Exhibits must be handed over by April 21. Guilt phase lay witnesses. They didn't say if necessary here. Guilt phase witnesses. For guilt phase, sorry, shall be filed by April 21st. Penalty phase witnesses, they did not say there if needed, will be filed under seal by May 5th. And that's about it. Those are the goods. So most importantly, they've set aside roughly 2 weeks for the trial, it looks like. I'm sorry, not 2 weeks. 2 weeks for jury selection.
Yeah.
And then roughly
2 months.
4 months. 4 months, right?
4.
September,
So what,
October,
August?
November. Oh, 3
Wow.
months. You're right.
Two and
September,
change.
October, November. 3 through months.
3.
So that means if they're lucky, it'll be done by the end of the year. That's,
Wow.
gives them a little flex there.
Right.
I
and,
was
you know,
thinking about going out there for that. I don't think so. Quarter of a year? No.
Yeah.
that was
If you
Delphi
go,
thing.
make sure you go before October.
Well,
Is
the hope is, Michael, you didn't see anything in that because I tweeted it or X'd it, whatever you want to call it, but I didn't get a chance to look at it. Is there any indication that they're going to allow the trial to be streamed?
Well, what I recall from the original notice on it, because there was some discussion on that, I thought they had already decided it was going to be the court system only.
That's what I thought too. Right.
But was
Yeah.
that judge's proclamation? I mean, I think it's going to be left to whoever.
I thought it was one of the things they first announced when it got to Ada. I may be misremembering that.
I hope so. I hope. So.
But
I mean,
I recall being mad about it. That's what I recall.
When is the ending? Because they're going to have this trial at the same date that these kids were killed. Is it the guilt, the penalty phase?
Let's see.
Did you go through that again?
No, it was later in the winter than that.
No,
It was-
it was Thanksgiving weekend.
yeah, it was like November.
Oh, that's right. So this will be over a few weeks before that, in theory. It could carry on.
Theory.
It could
Okay.
carry on.
Right.
That's only a 2-3 week difference. So
I mean, if the indication in terms of the pretrial litigation is helping us try to, this thing's going to go. It's going to go a long time. I mean, Ann Taylor's litigating the hell out of it. And we still have, I anticipate a ton of motions yet to be heard.
no doubt about it.
I mean, they really haven't gotten into any of the suppression, if there are going to be any of the searches or statements or anything. So I mean, there's going to be a litany that's going to be happening. And I imagine it'll pick up steam probably in the next few months.
And
Yeah.
Bob, we talked about it just before you got on, and for everyone, we actually started the show. You know, the Parkland school shooting case. They saved that kid's life by having him plead guilty and then spending months really on the penalty phase, the mitigating factors. We don't know if there's any mitigating factors here at all. Right now, we haven't seen any.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
Yeah. So one of the things I was suggesting is that, I don't know, because you and I both know that when you get a death penalty case, forget the guilt. You start with the death penalty. You start defending the death penalty first. You start with your mitigation specialist to go out there and get all, from birth, was there any, prior to birth, was there any problems in the uterus? Was there any problems with the doctor? Any problems with the birth? And that's where you start.
It's funny you should mention that. As I'm reading through this on the fly, death penalty motions. The state's responses to the defense motions challenging the death penalty are due October 10. That's tomorrow.
Right. This year?
Yeah. Yes. Unless they typoed it. Yeah. The defense reply briefs are due October 24th. So they got 2 weeks. And then they're going to have a hearing on those motions November 7th this year. So that's the death penalty issue. Discovery motions are going to be handled between, looks like all consolidated into a January 23 hearing. And the paperwork back and forth will begin the first part of December, but the hearing itself, January 23rd.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah. So you're right, Bob. There's a whole bunch happening immediately. I mean,
Yeah.
tomorrow, in terms
Yeah.
of death penalty response.
And it's kind of like what Doug was talking about. It's interesting, you know, I mean, Judge was sitting on this thing for what? I mean, over almost 2 years, you know, so it's like to have that kind of like change of judge in the middle of the proceedings is unusual. And, you know, but fortunately there hasn't been a ton litigated,
Right.
to be honest with you. A lot of it was, I mean, the biggest kind of bone of contention between the parties was really the whole change of venue, you know, wherein they had gone out and done the polling, and Judge initially was furious with it, but once it kind of landed with him and he took a look at it, which is funny because we polled the jury in that Garcia case we handled in Omaha because they were really trying our guy in the press. There was a lot of publicity locally in that county, and we felt that it needed to be moved out of that county. And the disciplinary committee in Illinois gave us hell about it. They're like, well, you went out and polled the jury. I'm like, yeah, how else do you go in on a change of venue motion without some kind of receipts
Right.
as to how it's affected the general public, the potential
Right.
jury pool? I'm like, it was strange, but like the ARDC out here, ultimately nothing came of it, but it was strange that they came at us with it, because I'm like, it was the first thing my father says. We polled the jury for Gacy, you know, like they were obviously trying Gacy, you know, in the press, rightfully so, but you know, but it was still like, I mean, how else are you to know, you know,
Right.
Of course.
the general consensus is out there with the people.
And to
Right,
Afton, according to this notice, yeah, it is going to be 3:30 Mountain Time every day. So
That's great.
again, we like it on the East. I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
Definitely.
you know, and Judge wanted to shoehorn the case into when the kids were gone from college, the students were gone. I call them kids because they are to me. Students were gone from college, so it'd be in the summer, so the students wouldn't be there. But the sorority house, two of Ethan's family members are still go to that school, and they're at that sorority, not the sorority, the fraternity, I should say, house across the street.
Yep.
So I don't know how you could have tried that case there. I just simply don't know.
Yeah, that would have been a nightmare, just an absolute nightmare. It's like too close to home. You know, I mean, it's like not only for trying to impanel impartial jury, but, you know, just for the community, you know, to be able to try to heal and continue to heal, to have that circus going on there, just kind of reopening all the wounds over and over again, just with everybody up in everybody's business and asking questions and knocking on it. Just like, I'm glad they moved it. It's.
Were you surprised that Judge didn't tag along? I mean, they could have done that.
Nah, I think he wanted to get rid of that case.
Oh, I think he did too. So I thought would ask you that. Yeah.
Like when that order first came down, I think I was one of the first people to tweet it, and like everyone, and the way that I read it was I pulled up the local rules there from the Idaho criminal rules, and the language was very specific. So he had the opportunity, if he wanted to try to stay on it, he had language that he was going to use. But when I saw the order and I read it, he used the exact language that you would use to say, I'm good, put it to another judge. Like, I knew he was off the case at that point. Now, I mean, like trials like that, you know, I mean, it's like the thing with, I know we're going to talk about Delphi in a bit. Like, I've got wondering why Gull wanted to deal with this. I mean, she's 20 plus years into her career. She's got aspirations for the high court in Indiana. You know, like, why torture yourself with this nightmare procedural case?
Because you've got aspirations for the high court, and you'll be in the media all the time.
Yeah,
you're making me thirsty by drinking.
I'm sorry. I'm dying. Like I was out with my kid. Like we were practicing. Like
Look, that's okay. We're not sponsored by Dunkin'. We're not sponsored by Dunkin' Donuts, by the way. It just
we should be.
We
though.
should
Dunkin',
be.
It's my crap.
Take a peek at that, please. Dunkin'.
I love the cheddar bagel twist. I like those. Do you like a big? I turn that into a nice egg sandwich. Slice that in the middle. Put a nice egg on. Oh, it's great.
Kidding me? They got great coffee too. Like, I'm a big iced coffee guy. I think I get exactly what Linda gets there. I look like a big old.
This is in case you run out of that. You can get these.
Delicious.
I don't
search-
It's like my crack cocaine. Oh, but
Okay.
we have a mug now. We have a mug. Look.
Oh,
Yeah.
merch.
We have a
Merch.
Where in the world is justice?
I love it.
Would you get a contest next time, Michael, because we're calling him Justice right now.
I don't drink coffee though, Bob. This is vodka, so no coffee
Next
for
time.
me. Ooh, that coffee.
Next time
Ooh.
Michael goes on the road, we'll start out. We're doing clues as to where he's going to be, and the person who guessed that gets a mug, as they did when he went to Atlanta to cover, as he says, the man on the street to ask questions on the YSL case. So yes,
I like that.
But you know what? He hasn't shared it with his pod partner.
No, there's only one way to get one, and that's by guessing correctly where we're going to be. So
Wow.
keep trying.
Wow. Well, I hope you show up in Delphi, Indiana.
Oh, see,
that's
that's
what
planting the
I'm
seed
talking
for
about.
that one.
You're going there. Okay, so talk to us.
What's the schedule on that? Yeah, get us into that.
Nightmarish. So I think she's talking about starting at 8:30 every morning and going till 6:30 at night.
Okay.
She was originally going to go Monday through Saturday.
Oh,
But when the last trial date got stricken and she set a new trial date and added a little time at the end, she got rid of the Saturdays, thankfully. Because I mean, I'm going to be traveling and living out there somewhere, you know, and you know, standing online potentially.
Oh yeah, because tell us about that, because the transparency is not there. That case is not going to be streamed, right?
No.
She's going to limit the amount of people. So talk to us about that.
Yeah.
Tried in the dark. Yeah. So, and it's a very, very small courthouse and courtroom. I think last count when I was in there, not including the 20 that she sets aside for the families, the victims' families. And I think Richard Allen's like support, like his wife and his mother are typically there. So she's carved out 20 seats for that. I think 10 seats for the defense, 10 seats for the prosecution. And this is, I'm talking about in the gallery. And then the rest is for the general public. And then she carved out 12 for the media, legacy media. Now she doesn't consider us. She doesn't consider any YouTubers or anybody that's not on, you know, a bona fide media station as to being real media. So I didn't even drop my name in the hat. I was going to file a temporary restraining order or a temporary injunction to try to get that decision, because I think we've entered a new day, and there's been a new era.
That's such old school thinking. It's ridiculous.
It really is. I mean, a lot of people, if you talk to like a majority of people, they get their news via YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, X. You know, I mean, there's just like social media is kind of where it's at.
Cronkite died how many years ago? He was a news media for channel CBS. I mean, it's ridiculous. As a matter of fact, YouTube is the biggest search engine in the world. In the world. That's why, hey, Judge Gold, that's why the NFL is now on YouTube, because it can stream to everybody. That's why you have to go to the YouTube channels. That is such old-fashioned thinking. She probably thinks that blood spatter may be a science too. I don't know.
In tool markings.
Yeah,
and
tool markings. Right.
But I digress.
Yeah, right. So, about that.
So when is it? What's the start date? Did I miss that?
Monday.
What's the start date?
So Monday.
This Monday?
This Monday, the 14th, they are scheduled to start picking a jury up in Allen County, which is her county. So they basically, the defense had filed a motion for a change of venue. It was granted in part. I consider it to be the same thing, but she really granted a change of veneer. So they're going to go up there. They're going to pick the jury from Allen County citizens, which is about 100 miles away from Carroll County. And then they're going to import them back and keep them sequestered in a hotel in a neighboring city that's substantially bigger than Carroll County or Delphi. So,
and what's the jury trial estimate?
Well, she set a hard end date, which I believe is November 14th. I'm sure one of our fabulous subs out there will give me the date on that. It's about it's about a month.
Yeah, I'm always thinking about the jury. That's a sentence.
Yeah. Well, and
that's bad.
That's bad. And she has basically said that she anticipates that jury selection will take 2 days. She's kind of put out a little bit of a schedule. She said on Wednesday, that the legacy media can come in and speak with the judge, ask questions of the prosecutor and defense counsel, and then it sounds like Thursday will be opening statements is the way that she's planning on it to go down. So whether or not that actually happens, I mean, like I just have a problem with any judge putting an end date on a trial, especially a trial, wherein somebody's looking at life or not in this circumstance, but like a death penalty. It's very difficult to put it. You want to be able to give the jury a good idea of when things are going to end, but you can't like she can't say if the defense has 15 witnesses left approaching what she's considered to be the last day of trial that she's ending it and cutting it off, but
it's different than YSL where you have they've been going on and on and on. And this case. Well, why don't you give us who the victims are, names of the victims, when the crime happened, what was the crime for people that don't know about it? Give us the background.
Yeah. So if you guys have not heard of the case, it's two beautiful young girls back in February 13th, to be exact, of 2017, in the small rural town of Indiana, called Delphi. Two girls and I believe that it was a Monday, the day before Valentine's Day, but there had been a snow day that had been scheduled. That snow day wasn't used, so they gave the kids off school that day. Oh. The girls had wanted to get out to this area called the Monon High Bridge, and it's a trail system that they've created out there where people that live in the community love to go out there. Kids love to go out there because in order to take photographs for social media, Instagram, Snapchat, all that stuff. It's very picturesque. The Monon High Trail is an old railroad trestle that goes over this waterway called Deer Creek, about 100 feet above it. So, and the kids and people used to walk across this trestle. So the girls had arranged to get out there that day. The two girls are Abigail Williams and Liberty German, ages 13 and 14 respectively. And Libby's sister Kelsey had agreed to drop the girls off at this trailhead so that they could go and hang out and walk the trails, take their pictures, whatever they're going to do. And they had arranged for their father to come pick them up at around 3:15 that same day. So they get dropped off around 1:30. The last thing that ever comes out of Libby's phone is a Snapchat picture at about 2:07 p.m. wherein she's taking a picture of her friend Abby on the trestle, on the tracks, and she posted to Snap. And that's the last thing that was ever heard from of the girls. So dad gets there, Derek German gets there, tries texting the girls, tries texting Libby, "Where are you? I'm here." He gets out. When he gets no response, walks the trails, doesn't see the girls anywhere. He starts calling the family. The family start calling extended family, friends, to find out if the girls had just wandered off and met somebody else and gone and hang out with somebody else, whatever, the typical things that you would do before just jumping to the conclusion that something nefarious has happened, especially in a community like this, where things like this just typically don't happen. That's not where the first place that your mind would go, is that my girls have been kidnapped and murdered. Right. So that goes on until about 5:30. They have no luck. No one's heard from the girls. No one's seen the girls. And at that point, they finally reach out to law enforcement. At that point, law enforcement starts a massive search, including, recruiting all the citizens that are willing to come out and help. This thing goes on until the early morning hours. They don't find the girls during that night into the early morning hours. Search stops for a bit, picks right back up, probably at dawn. And around noon, just before noon, they unfortunately discover both the girls' bodies on a piece of land adjoining the trails on this gentleman named Ron Logan, his property. Unfortunately, obviously, the girls were deceased. At that point, 5 years goes by. They investigate it heavily. There's all kinds of speculation out there. There were names thrown out there. Obviously, the property owner, Ron Logan, was looked at pretty heavily. I think they went so far as to get a search warrant to, dig around in his place a little bit. They also had thought that maybe this guy named Kagan Klein, who was running this spoof account, or a catfish account that was used to try to attract girls into this account. It was like a picture of a really handsome young guy, and he was like trolling girls. At some point, they started to believe that he was involved with it, so they were looking at Kagan Klein and his father kind of collaterally, but not like they were looking at Kagan Klein. So, but none of those things ended up in an arrest. You know, fast forward to October of 2022, an arrest is finally made. The world is like, oh my God! But I skipped one critical part. So what kind of put this case on the map in terms of everyone being like, oh boy, is that Libby had taken a video of this person that was walking on the bridge at or around the times that the girls were thought to have gone missing. And this person was wearing a blue Carhartt jacket, blue jeans, boots, kind of your typical garb for rural Indiana, and had some kind of head covering on. And so the law enforcement, very soon after the case started, the investigation started in earnest, they released this photograph to the public, and they said, we believe that this person may have information. If you know him or if you recognize him, please contact us. So they started the tip line. And then a couple days later, they released a very small amount of audio that was also caught by Libby German on her phone, wherein this person apparently is saying down the hill, down the hill. So it's a very eerie, strange thing. So that kind of captured the nation's interest, and that really got this thing out into the public sphere. And so it became a heavily followed case by millions of people, really. But then it goes cold. And then October of 2022, they make an arrest. They arrest Richard Allen, who was a local guy, lived in Delphi, Indiana. He worked at the CVS as a pharmacy tech, has no criminal background. We're talking about a very small community. If you live in a small community and you go to the same businesses all the time, I know all the women that work at the Walgreens where I live. We live in a smaller type town. I know that the kids that work at the McDonald's, you see the same people over and over. So
what do they have tying him to the crimes?
So what they had, at least in the PCA, was presence at the bridge, because it turns out that he had he had volunteered that he was at the bridge either the day of or the day after the girls went missing. When they were asking the public, if you were out at the bridge, please come in and let us know. We're trying to get a grasp of who was out there.
And he volunteered that? He came in and volunteered that?
Yeah, the day of or the day after the girls went missing, came in and said, yeah, this is what I was wearing. I was out there. This is when I was out there. That thing got lost, that statement. So this Dan Doolin was the resource officer who took the statement somewhere that got lost in the shuffle. And then 5 years later, it gets dug up. So they're like, oh, well, this guy was out there. And then the other piece that they had was this unspent shell casing that was purportedly found between the girls.
I saw that.
They sent that off. So unspent means that it did not cycle through the barrel.
Right.
That most likely it was either when they racked the gun, it popped out, but it wasn't fired. It wasn't a fired projectile.
Right.
So they sent that to the lab after the search of Richard Allen's house, and they claim that whoever the analyst is claiming that they were able to match it up like an ejected unspent casing, that they were able to match it up with his gun.
Well, so I know that's not called ballistics. That is tool mark comparison,
right.
More, and it's very suspect. We had that in Hernandez. The jury didn't buy it. Okay, it's been under attack, but judges seem to love it because they call it ballistics, and it's just like they think, well, we've been doing it for years, and that has to be a match, especially in unspent because it used to be the FBI, as also tried to take the gunpowder and say, well, the same gunpowder was inside. And that's been proven to be a bad sign. So the FBI doesn't do that anymore. So that's what they have connecting him. That's it.
That's it. That's all we know so far.
So,
and they've got 4 eyewitnesses that saw. Every one of them gives a different description of bridge guy. So, and they have, like, the state has flat out set their timeline is that they believe that the girls were kidnapped and killed between 2:30 and 3:30. That is in stone. That is their timeline. There's no moving off of it. I was there for 3 days of hearings back in August, and Jerry Holman, who was one of the Indiana State Troopers, who was the head of the Unified Command, which was the agency that they had formed with multiple agencies having people in there, that was heading the investigation. He was on the stand. He said, "That's our timeline. It's how we believe that the girls were kidnapped and killed between 2:30 and 3:30. That means that Alan was there. That's it." And so kind of the procedural posture of this case has been a nightmare. Frankly, I've never seen anything like it in terms of
how were they killed? By the way, I see Domino, your dog.
I know.
He's making a
so adorable.
I don't know what he's doing.
We're talking about a gruesome homicide of 2 young people,
know.
and your dog
Not a
is
timely entrance.
Thankfully.
No, but the Domino's taking the edge off it. So
Exactly. Like there's nothing better than a dog coming and like easing the pain.
Yeah, because this is the
sharp blunt
right?
injury. It was, they were, it looks like their necks were cut. There was neither of the girls were shot. So, like the gun wasn't even used. It's one of those cases where,
Did he know them? Did he know them? Was there any theory that he know? And what is this Odinism thing that I keep seeing? Somebody grabbed me at CrimeCon last year and said we have to talk about this.
It's moot. So there were 3 cops. These cops, Click, Ferenczi, and Murphy, who are all reputable cops. Now Click just got arrested recently. There's one thing after another with this case. In terms of kind of like what seems to be like a concerted effort to get a conviction here to me. But these 3 cops, for 2 years after the initial investigation started, were digging into this Odinist angle, which is, that there was this group of white supremacists that basically taken and morphed aspects of Norse paganism into their own religion, and that they believed that these people were responsible for the crimes because the crime scene had a very distinct look to it, wherein initially they had gone and consulted with a professor, and I'm talking about Unified Command, had gone and consulted with a professor at Purdue to say, does this look ritualistic to you? I know it sounds crazy,
it sounds like the West Memphis 3 case where they were trying to get everybody going up, but this was the defense doing as opposed to
right. So, but no, like in the investigation, they initially went, and the feds had said that it was kind of the behavioral analysis unit was like a little ambivalent as to what it was. They ultimately landed on saying that they thought that they were, that the sticks were being used to kind of like cover up the girls as opposed to being, ritualistic in nature. The defense is obviously saying no, but ultimately there was a ruling, and so they had named 5 suspects that were known Odinists that were posting very strange things in very close proximity to the time that the girls were killed on their Facebook pages. That all were known to be pretty violent, or at least two of the guys were known to be pretty violent. One of the guys had made some bizarre statement to Murphy about, if I had spit on one of the girls and left DNA on them, but I had an explanation for it, would I be okay? Like saying things, and I had left sticks in her hair to look like antlers, just things that were said by this guy that would tend to lead you to like, maybe these guys are involved. I think had they been able to place any of these guys at the bridge that day, like definitively, I think that these guys probably would have been arrested, but they couldn't, and they weren't. So it kind of fell to Richard Allen because he had said that he was at the bridge that day.
But could you tell us, the Supreme Court says, we've done this in a number of cases, that if you have a suspect, you can point to, the defense is entitled to point to it. So this judge just said that the defense can't, even though there were statements made, and yet she's allowing statements made to prison therapists and all sorts of stuff. And tell us the difference. Tell us what's happening here with that.
She can't just, so they had a very lengthy hearing on it, wherein the state had filed a motion in limine to bar them from introducing, even mentioning Odinism any of these 5 individuals who Clarency or Ferenczi, Click, and Murphy all thought were very solid suspects. She felt that there was no nexus to the crime that could be introduced through admissible evidence. That was her ruling. So she barred them from being able to put on any kind of third-party culprit defense, at least relating to those individuals and Odinism. So like that's dead in the water unless they can develop something through cross-examination that revives it. She's really handcuffed the defense in terms of that. And, it's like the most recent thing that they're fighting. Now the state is the defense had hired a metallurgy guy to come in to basically attack the science of tool markings.
Absolutely.
They have a couple of different experts. And, this guy has worked for the feds for 24 years. He's testified over 200 cases, clearly very qualified, clearly very knowledgeable, clearly would give the jury things that would help them decide what weight they're going to give this unspent casing, because they don't really use Daubert like many states do. And if people don't know what Daubert is, that if you're going to challenge scientific evidence, you typically do it through what they call a Daubert hearing, which is Daubert was a Supreme Court case, wherein that's how they're trying to weed out what we consider to be junk science. So, but they don't
be Kelly or Kelly Fry for those who are old enough to remember that. Exactly. And I prefer the Daubert, the kind of the French pronunciation. Yes. Let me ask you, educate me on Indiana here. You're the oracle for this case. I don't remember in any of my years at Court TV or in the time at Law and Crime, a lot of trials being televised there. So is this just their thing not to let it happen? Or I mean, I always think, what are you hiding?
Yeah, no, it's and funny enough, Gull sat on the board of that was trying to put together kind of this pilot program for having cameras in the courtrooms. So she did allow cameras in the courtrooms on one date during this entire thing. So yes, they are allowed in there. Okay. It's left to the judge's discretion. The only time that she allowed it was on the date that she basically gave the defense counsel a Hobson's choice of either withdraw or I'm going to bring you out into the well of the court and I'm going to pants you in front of the whole world because I granted your motion and allowed the cameras in their defense. So this is going to be televised, or I'm going to, and I'm going to fleece you out there in public and say that, I believe that you're negligent and that you're not worthy of being on this case, that I don't think that you're working in your client's best interest. So Baldwin withdrew. Rosie, the other attorney, said, well, I'll put something in writing. Obviously at some point they had no notice. There was no motion for sanctions to have them removed that had been filed either by the state or by the judge on her own motion. So they had no due process. They had no ability to be able to, they came into an ambush that day. So that was the only time that she had allowed the camera. So we know that they can have them in there. Right. And she's just choosing to try this thing in the dark. As to why, your guess is as good as I have no idea.
So there's no sunshine in Indiana because there's no sunshine.
Trying it in the dark. Trying it
in the dark, just like we are here back here in New York City.
Yeah, in New York, New York has a similar rule. Technically, TV is allowed in New York. They just have a practical, application that says, nah, we're not going to do it.
Same with Illinois. Same with Illinois. We allow them, but we don't take advantage of it.
Right.
It's just not a thing. But like I said, they put together a pilot program, and Gull was, I think, the head of that pilot program in terms of trying to start incorporating cameras in the courtrooms. I mean, look, my thing is, why not?
Yeah.
It's as long as the judge has a handle on it and they're
that's the key right there, because I think judges are scared. They're scared, man. Because they know they're going to be front and center and talked about, better or worse.
Heavily scrutinized. No question.
Of course. Look at, the Ito rule, I call it. If you know Judge Ito from the OJ case, that guy was lambasted.
Oh my God!
Well, and he deserved it.
He did.
But so I think, to me, a judge that has lesser quality and maybe is insecure for a good reason, they're less likely to say, bring the cameras in and let's open this baby up.
I agree. I agree
We
completely.
had cameras in the Spectre case, but what they did in California, for people that don't know, is they were showing the gallery, in OJ, and that got riled up. Here's this person, here's this famous person, here's this. Oh my God, look at the reaction, that kind of stuff. So after the OJ case, they ruled that you can't show the gallery, and that seemed to be a good solution. So all you see are the defendants, their attorneys, and the judge, and that's it. And so
Right.
you're seeing the trial, and you get to see some of
I'll
the
take
evidence.
that. Yeah,
And
I'll take that.
And I think, as a matter of fact, I like that. I don't like showing all the people in the gallery. I think that's it kind of sometimes can use the people, family members on both sides, right?
Yeah, 100%.
For
Definitely.
ratings. So
Yeah, I as a compromise, I got no problem with that. But just to shut it down entirely because maybe you're concerned about how you might come off as the judge, that's just not right. I mean, if you're a judge, you're supposed to be making this available to the public. And
Right.
yes, you have to have maybe certain constraints and some rules, but what better way to make it available to the largest number of people?
In this case in particular, where there's just been so much scrutiny about her rulings on everything, and she's basically done this procedurally, wherein every motion that the defense has filed, she has ruled on without hearing in summary form through like a minute order. Like, she's not citing law as to the basis of her opinions. It's been very, very unusual. So like in a case like this, where she removed her, his counsel of choice, and like
the counsel, and she removed the defense. The defenses, they have no defense. Miranda was denied. So where are they going? I mean, he might as well be there without counsel because she's taken everything away from them.
Right, she's completely handcuffed them. So I mean, but they're going to go in there and do what they can. I mean, there's going to be issues with the timeline as far as I'm concerned. I mean, what we know through the pleadings and the hearings that I've attended is that the ME did not take the body temperature of the girls when they were discovered. So they didn't check.
Time of death is up in the air.
So that no stomach contents were looked at. No time of death was established at all by the ME. So you attack, if you're the defense, you're attacking that timeline immediately.
Of course.
Because there's a period of time. And I've been like, I've done many, many lives on it. And I'm like, look, like there has to have been a civilian searcher that went down on that property during that 8 hours. They were all over the place, hundreds of people. And if the girls weren't there at 8 or 9 p.m. or 10, at any point during that evening, you've destroyed their timeline. That means the girls were then brought back and left there that morning. There's a lot of really interesting facts. They still have a lot to work with. Their biggest problem in that case is the fact that purportedly Alan has made 61 confessions of some sort.
But it almost sounds like it's somebody who's got psychiatric.
A serial confessor.
Right. Serial confessor to everybody. I mean, it's not like you have one, you have the incentivized informants, you have people working for the state. They say it's his family members. I don't know, but after you confess that many times, you either did it or you didn't. I mean, this is ridiculous, but it also, you want the evidence. I mean, I want to see the dirt from the crime scene in his boots, in his shoes, or in the closet, or in his clothes, or something.
100%. We've got to see that. There's got to be some kind of link beyond an unspent casing that puts him at that scene and with the girls. Because this whole concept that there's the video. He's the bridge guy. We've decided that the bridge guy is the one who kidnapped the girls. That means he's the guy who did it. It's not enough. It can't be enough. Like, we can't allow that to be definitive enough to reach the burden, that very, very high burden of beyond a reasonable doubt, because it's not enough. And that was what I said when that PCA dropped, and it dropped ironically very close in time to Kohberger. So that dropped in October. We didn't get to see it for months, a couple months before, because they sealed the PCA in that case. It was like that case really kind of started this trend where they started sealing probable cause affidavits, which, as you guys both know, is not the norm. There's got to be extenuating circumstances in order for that constitutional right for us to be able to view it, the public, for transparency purposes, that there has to be real reasons that they did it. And there were none. When I read it, I'm like, why did they seal this? I'm like, if they needed to redact the witnesses' names, then redact them. They do that all the time. Addresses, phone numbers, names, fine. There was nothing in that PCA. And the way that I read it, I was like, wow, this thing leans innocent to me. That's like, having read hundreds and hundreds of PCAs in my career, it leans innocent. I'm like, where's the evidence? Like, where's the small? So then we get November, when the Kohberger arrest or whatever. When was Kohberger? December, like mid-December.
The arrest, it was mid to late.
Yeah. So when that PCA drops, you read that you're like, wow, like they did some good police work here. Like, so you like, and I went in and did a live, and I'm like, okay, for all the people that don't understand what I'm saying in terms of a PCA that leans innocent, I'm going to read both of these PCAs to you.
That's a probable cause affidavit for those.
Probable cause affidavit, and we're going to see what a strong one is that leans guilty to me in comparison to one that leans innocent. So I read through Kohberger, which was just a very impressive document, which obviously Ann Taylor is attacking. Even that can be attacked. Like, to me, the better example is the Hewerman bail application. That thing is a masterpiece. Like that like anybody who reads that, who doesn't think that they have this guy dead to rights, is nuts. Like I have all the confidence in the world they got the right guy on that one. He's still.
Bob, let me ask you this though. You can't go in the courtroom to watch. There's no streaming. There's 10 quote legacy media. I mean, media that's dying. I mean, like, it's like you have your legacy person on their face, Facebook that you have to assign, right? How are you going to get your information from the legacy media there, from people coming out? What?
I'm going to go wait online at 5 a.m. to get in.
Try to be one of the general public. With the general public, right?
39.
But you won't be able to have a computer or anything, right?
I got to write it all down on yellow legal pads like back in law school.
That's a commitment. That's a commitment.
Hey, let me circle back to a question based on what you said earlier about they're so locked into this timeline that they have. They're saying this is it. How do you do that without a time of death?
Beats me. Beats me. It's like that's the state's problem, right? I mean, they've got to be able to establish that. If the defense is going to say, because like one interesting thing came out very late in discovery, and it's been the issue that it's been presented in a couple of motions, and apparently Libby's phone reconnects to a tower, and there's only, I think, 2 towers in Delphi. So her phone, no one has contact with her from 2:07 p.m. on. Like, there's like, we know that Derek German was texting. I'm sure tons of family members were texting. So at 4:30 a.m., the phone turns back on, connects with the tower, and 15 messages come in at 4:30 a.m. Wow. So it's either the phone was turned off and then turned back on at 4:30 in the morning, because like the defense is going to be attacking that, and they're going to be challenging it, and they're going to be surmising that the bodies were returned to that area, and the phone was left specifically under the body of one of the girls and turned on. And so when these messages flood in, now the counter argument is some people are opining that maybe the phone got wet and it dried out, and then after it dried out on a cold February night, that somehow it turned back on, and the messages then came in at that point. I think the more likely scenario is the phone was either turned off or it left the area, and then when it was brought back to the area. And it would seem, the logic would seem to dictate that the killer wanted the girls to be discovered, so they turned the phone on, because they were pinging it. AT&T was pinging it every 15 minutes. So that's the other factor of it. So that has to tell you. So when they're trying to ping it every 15 minutes and it doesn't ping for 8+ hours, 9+ hours, that's a problem for the state. And I mean, they're going to have to explain that, because if the girls were removed from the scene and then brought back to the scene, it destroys the case against Richard Allen, in my estimation, because he's alibied up like for the night. Like, his wife's going to be testifying that he was home, Now, I mean, like, you can give that the weight that it deserves, in terms of, obviously the state will challenge that and say, well, it's your husband, or, would you implying that she would lie on his behalf to say that he was home after that time. But I mean, she really did handcuff him, but there's a lot there. And short of them putting on, like, they're really relying on these confessions. When the confessions become your strongest piece of evidence, and those pieces of evidence came after he's been in custody in a prison as opposed to in a jail in solitary 23 hours a day, being guarded by guards wearing Odin patches and you know, and by felons who are convicted that are in that unit. And he's in the, you know, the worst of the worst unit. Like that's where they put the murderers and, you know, like that's where all the people that they can't afford to put into Gen Pop, they are held there. So he had these companions there that were felons that would sit outside of his cell with a pad of paper and a notepad. We have no idea what he was being fed, what he was being, what they were saying to him, how much they were abusing him, like over this period of time. What we do know, because he was seeing a psychiatrist, the prison psychiatrist, this Monica Walla, that she had said during that period of time when he makes all these confessions, he was pre-psychotic. Like he was eating his own feces. He was running headfirst into like the brick cinder wall in his cell. He wasn't eating. So he was definitely in massive mental distress. How much of that she's going to allow in order to try to combat these confessions is unknown, because the defense's argument that they made when they tried to suppress it was that, like, look, it was like, we could all agree the custodial prong is taken care of. The voluntariness prong is the one that we need to look at. And while you're not having your typical interrogation scenario, what we're saying is that all of the conditions of his confinement were the interrogation, that served as an interrogation over a period of months, and it broke him mentally. And, you know, whatever they may have been feeding him, you know, because like if you have this situation where you get a guy who's arrested, he's brought in, he doesn't lawyer up, they go at him for 48, 50, 60 hours before they have to release him, and he cracks, but they're coming at him hard. They're not letting him sleep. They're not giving him food or drink, and they're hammering away at him, and he cracks and he makes a confession. But he gives details that only the killer would know. That has a lot of weight. So it seems like they may have cracked him. This situation wherein Alan is
suspect versus suspect, the real suspect versus a suspect confession.
Exactly.
So are we going to?
What I want to say to people though is, Bob and what we're talking here is we're not like people accuse criminal defense attorneys of, you want to have the killers on the street. No, we just want the right people convicted. Yes. And if there's one thing the Innocence Project have shown us is there's a lot of wrong people that have been convicted with judges and juries in that courtroom and people not coming forward. And that's what we're trying to avoid. We want the right people convicted, because forever, everybody who's wrongfully convicted, guess what? There's a killer on the street.
Right. So, and those families haven't gotten justice.
Are we going to have a string of snitches, informants? What's going to be the source of all of those confessions?
Incentivize informants, as we know.
Well, it sounds like what it's going to be is they're claiming that some of the confessions were made via phone calls made from his tablet to his wife and his mother. Apparently, he, like, at some point he was saying it to all kinds of people, and the state's theory is that in March, like around March 17th of 2023, that he found God, and that after he found God, that he decided, okay, well, I've got to come clean. And then he started asking his wife. Now, this is what the state's saying. Obviously, we're going to, the suicide, we're going to hear the content of these confessions. Like, those are going to have to be played in court for the jurors. So, like, I'm going to get to hear them. And until that point, like, so they come in all forms and fashions. I don't know, like McClellan, the prosecutor, is stating that a couple of them have factual scenarios. Like, one of the ones that the defense put out is that Alan said, I kidnapped them and I shot the girls and I sexually assaulted them. And neither of those things is true. Mm-hmm. So they're going to use things where he gives incorrect facts to try to combat that. But the bottom line is, as well as I do, guys, like, you have 61 confessions. The weight of that is going to be impactful on a jury. It's going to be very difficult for the defense to overcome that. Whether he's guilty or innocent, it's not going to matter to the jury. They're going to be like this. Like, no one confesses 61 times unless he did it.
Right, people don't believe you have one confession that could be false. So they just don't understand false confessions. They're never going to understand 61. Right.
Exactly.
Well, it's going to be an amazing case, and can I make you an honorary "Where in the World is Justice"? So when you're there next week, can we check in with you and see what the heck's happening?
Absolutely, I'll definitely jump up live.
Obviously, Defense Diaries is your platform, and we just want to share you for a minute or two and find out what's happening.
I love you guys. Anytime you guys want me on, I'll jump on.
You're great. You're great.
Yeah, I have a feeling there are going to be one or two twists and turns in that courtroom.
Seems like it.
Thank you, Bob. Just such a pleasure.
And as I've said from the beginning, what we're trying to do here, Linda and I, we don't know what the hell we're doing. So anything we've learned, been able to cobble together, this guy here is in part wholly, maybe in part to blame. And I had the good fortune, as Linda did, we met him and his lovely bride down at CrimeCon. And at that time, we were just kind of beginning to figure out what we're going to try and do. I'm not sure we figured it out yet, Linda, but we were working on it. So nice to meet this guy. And I'm going to tell you this. This comes from ancient history in the more traditional broadcast world. It's a backstabbing, conniving world. And it drives a lot of people from traditional. I'm talking network. I'm talking syndication, national syndication, all of which I've dipped my toe into. This world that we're involved in now is so collaborative and so friendly and so welcoming. It is a breath of fresh air for somebody like me who's, you could get beaten down by that old system. And this is great. And Bob, you're a perfect ambassador of that. And I really appreciate it.
I always am here for my friends. There's enough for all of us to succeed and do well. So anything I can ever do to help my friends, I do it because it's.
Well, tell us what you need, and we'll send it to you. Whatever you need.
Linda
help your wife.
I think Linda just volunteered to stand in line for you at 5 a.m. if you can get a seat.
Oh, I wish.
I used to have a friend who was a bug. I'll call him a bug expert that people know. And he lived in Indiana. He collected tanks. So, unfortunately, he's now died. Or else I would come out and maybe do that for you, Bob. But now, no, that's okay. We'll just give you a platform.
Stay home with your husband. You'll be much happier for it.
I'll send you a case of Dunkin' Donuts.
That would be where.
You'll need some of that. Hey, man, have a great time. I always say there's nothing like being on the ground for these things to really know what's going to happen. And we're grateful for you doing it. I know everybody is. I said earlier today when we were talking, you're the oracle. I know somebody latched onto that as well. For Delphi, nobody knows more. And we can't wait to hear it as it unfolds, buddy.
Hey, man, I appreciate it, Michael. I love you guys. And hey, if you guys have not subbed, make sure you're subbing over here right now. And make sure that you guys, I want you to get better at saying like, share, subscribe.
Yeah, we're really, I know.
What's Defense Diaries and Justice Serve TV? Like, share, subscribe.
There's an alert. Is that a new thing now?
Make sure that you're hitting your notifications for Justice Serve so that you guys know when these guys go live. You guys know it. Make sure you're sub, but you have to sub to get your notifications.
Oh, okay.
And we've included you guys in our Discord. So Dizzy, who loves you guys and who loves helping you guys out, she has an amazing Discord called Seeking Justice. And so when you guys go live, I find that their notifications from their Discord, from everybody that is in that Discord, they get the notifications immediately that you guys are going
Dizzy,
live.
so sweet. She didn't even tell us about that Seeking Justice that she's got one Discord.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a wonderful. It's like any document. It's a document library from every active case, and she and her partner on that, Tracy, do amazing work. It's truly. I'll send you guys the link because if you guys ever want documents from any case, she's got them. So they're
okay. You guys, and you're great. So we'll be watching you, and really send me the address. I'll send you the Dunkin'.
I love you guys.
Take care, bud.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Okay. So so fun. So good.
Thank you all for coming in and watching us for over an hour tonight. Everybody who was there, and again, we're supposed to say like, share, and subscribe. You won't get a notification. And Bob taught us all that. And go ahead, Michael.
I just want to throw this out there one more time. It ain't officially going to be Indiana next week, but hey, Bob's going to kind of be helping us as we search for where in the world is justice. We got our own second version of that. It is to come, and the hints will begin rolling out probably next week. So we appreciate you taking part in that as well. It's kind of a fun way to get involved in what's out there and what we're trying to cover. Okay, let's get the heck out of here. Let me see. I got something. Let me see if I can find a button here to push to send us off in some sort of officialness. All right. See you next time, Linda. Hey, try to do the right thing.
Okay. I don't want to put more work on you. Hello, everybody. I don't want to put more work on you to like, share.